Hello, fabulous person. Beate Chelette here, the Growth Architect. Welcome back to the Business Growth Architect Show, where we bring you cutting-edge business strategies from some of the world's most successful entrepreneurs, business transformation experts, and visionaries who want to help you to scale your impact. Look for one tangible strategy that you can take back and implement right away. And now back to our guest. And welcome back. This is Beate Chelette, the host of the Business Growth Architect Show. And today we're going to tap into some entirely different things, pun intended, maybe not even a very good pun. Lauren Fonvielle is here with me. Lauren, I'm so excited to have you.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk with you today.
Excellent. For somebody who does not know you, have never heard of you, will you please tell them who you are and what you do?
Yes. So I am an integrative energy practitioner, and I specialize in something called EFT, which stands for Emotional Freedom Technique, to help entrepreneurs reduce their stress and increase their profits.
So here we already are at a loaded question. What is somebody like you doing on a podcast about strategy? And I'm going to just toss that question right to you.
Yes. So, in business, how we show up in our business is important, and how we show up depends on our thoughts. And if we're having positive, great thoughts, that's going to impact our energy and our interactions with those that we work with. And if we are having negative thoughts or fearful thoughts, then that's also going to impact how you show up in your business. And so addressing the thoughts and the emotions is an important piece, and one that a lot of the time is often, kind of skipped over. And I think as humans, that's something we do a lot. When we feel something that's uncomfortable, we don't like that. We don't enjoy that. And so we shove that stuff down and we distract ourselves with something else. And I think we can all relate to that idea that that stuff builds up to a point and then it can no longer be ignored. It's going to come out in some way, and maybe that's reflected in your business and in your financials, and not bringing in the kind of clients that you want to bring in. Or sometimes it can also show up physically in your body. When you're at that level of stress and anxiety, that can start to show itself in physical pain in your body too.
So one of the things that I hear a lot is this woo-woo?
Mm-hmm.
And is there actually data and science behind this? Because I think, and I'm sure you run into this all the time, that people go like, yeah, but that's not really my priority. My priority is the cash flow. So what do we say to people that say, is it too foo-foo? Is it too like spiritual, the secret thing? Can we all be logical and strategic and keep things together? So where is this fitting into business success?
Yeah, there is science behind it. And I think that's part of the reason why I love it so much. And there have been studies that show that it reduces the amount of stress in your body. And when you have a reduction in stress, you can think more clearly. When you're in a state where you're totally overwhelmed and you've got a million things going on and you're juggling it all, sometimes you can get to that point where you're like, I literally can't even think straight. And that's because you can't access that part of the brain because of all that anxiety and all of that cortisol that is pumping through your body. And tapping has been shown to reduce cortisol, which is the stress hormone, up to 43%. That's a really, really big number. And so I would say, it's totally okay if you're skeptical of this. I was very skeptical of this when I was first introduced to it. And then I experienced it and I was like, well, something's actually happening here because I'm feeling calmer and I don't know why. And so that's why I've continued to go on to study and learn it and practice it and get certified in it. But I would say, if you're someone that's dealing with stress and you know that stress is negatively impacting you, give it a try. There's no negative side effect to it. See if it's going to help you.
Yes, and that's really why I wanted to have you on the show, Lauren, is because, I always considered myself sort of the spiritual warrior in a business suit. Not that I wear suits very often anymore, but There is really a part about a balance in life, and there's a balance, the way we approach business. This is all about strategy in business. But I do think that we, as business owners, entrepreneur, consultants, coaches, and experts, have to also be very clear that we are not machines, and that the logical or strategic output that we are able to produce depend on our internal state. So I would like you to talk a little bit more about how the internal world reflects the external world. You alluded to that, but can you go a little bit deeper into that?
Yeah. Well, it all starts with our thoughts, and our thoughts impact our feelings, and our feelings impact our actions, and then our actions impact our results. And and that's a big thing because we want results in business. And I think a lot of the time we're very, very aware of how the external situation can impact how we feel, right? Things are going on around us, and that makes us feel a certain way. And I think with this, it's this idea that if you tune in, that our internal world can have just as big, if not a bigger impact on the external world and the experience that you're having. And it all starts with your thoughts and checking in with yourself. What am I feeling right now? What am I thinking? Beginning to create that awareness throughout your day, with what you're thinking and how you're feeling, because so often we don't do that. We don't check in with ourselves with how we're feeling, and that's an important thing to do.
I like that a lot. I think a lot of us are, when we get into the execution aspect of business ownership, that we are so caught up in the output that we really don't check in with ourselves, and we then keep pushing ourselves through that. And I want to talk to you a little bit more about that in just 1 minute after this message. Thank you so much for listening to the show. This is Beate, the growth architect. I'm so excited that you're here. Thank you so much for your time. Have you ever wondered why your business is not growing as quickly as you would like it to be? Well, you may have a business growth blocker. And if you'd like to find out what that business growth blocker is, go and take our brand new quiz at growthblockerquiz.com. And in only a few minutes, you're not just going to find out what that blocker is, but also what to do about it. Again, go to growthblockerquiz.com. And now back to the show. And welcome back. It's Beate in a conversation with Lauren, talking about tapping EFT and really understanding on how the internal world affects the external world. So we're not just talking about thinking positive thoughts and the secrets and sitting on the couch eating popcorn and wishing it was. But you had said that our internal world affects the outside world, and it starts with our thoughts. A lot of people have difficulties to go into that part, especially as it relates to fear. So and I'm going to give a very specific example that I think a lot of business owners can relate to. So every business owner comes to the point where they're going to have to hire the next person, right? On whether it's a first person or a 10th person, but there's always we're going to have to hire someone. When you get to that decision, oftentimes the cash flow isn't quite there yet because you're trying to make the decision to get to that cash flow. Now I'm freaking out.
Right.
I have this voice come in and it says, Beate, you are insane. Your cash flow is not consistent enough. How can you afford somebody like that? It's not possible. Tell me, in your world, how would I handle that now so I'm not freaking out, or worse, boycott myself?
Right. And so there's a lot of anxiety and stress that comes in with that, right? And so with tapping, what you would do is we would acknowledge that feeling. So I would ask you, on a scale of 1 to 10, how intense is that stress level? And then you would answer that question. And we would start there, and we focus on the negative. Focus on the fear, the worry, all of those thoughts that you just laid out that you're having, all the what ifs that are going on in your head that could happen, right? And we create phrases based on what you share. And then what we do is we create these phrases and we tap on certain points of our body. And what we are doing when we're doing that is really tuning into these feelings, allowing yourself to feel the fear. And that can be uncomfortable, right? That's not something, we don't like to feel the fear. We like to just move forward and keep going and power through. And that's what a lot of the time society tells us to do, right? Like chug along, push on. But this is a tool that really helps you to acknowledge your feelings and hold space for where you are. So it's very much the opposite of the idea of like, okay, I'm recognizing that I'm freaking out and I'm having all this anxiety and stress. And let me just flip a switch and go to the opposite end of the spectrum and say a positive affirmation like, I am abundant, the money is raining in, right? Because you can say those positive affirmations, but there's a complete disconnect from how you're actually feeling, because you're not feeling that abundance. It's lip service, right? So instead, what we do with tapping is we really allow ourselves to feel the fear, and we talk about and we say out loud. That's a big part of this, speaking out loud these thoughts. And when you're doing that, the intensity of them usually begins to move downward. And sometimes it can also bring up these past memories, right? Because we all have had experiences in our personal lives and also in our businesses, and those experiences have emotions attached to them, and those emotions can get stored in our body. And so maybe your fear around hiring someone, right? Maybe it's because you have a close friend who's an entrepreneur who hired somebody and they had some sort of failure, and then you have emotion attached to that. Or maybe there's money memories from your childhood of, being in lack and not having enough, and so those feelings start to make themselves known. And so as you tap, of course, different thoughts are going to come to mind, and it's really this process of connecting the dots and allowing ourselves to acknowledge whatever's coming up, even when it doesn't make sense because our cognitive mind wants to make sense of it. So if a memory pops up from our past, from our childhood, that you want to say to yourself, that's not related. That's not related to how I'm feeling in my business today. But I can promise you, if it's coming to the top of your mind, there is a reason for that. And tapping helps us to explore that. And in the process helps to reduce the stress, and you can feel more confident, more calm, and being able to make those good decisions.
What I really liked about what you said is that acknowledgement that there is often a disconnect between the positive thought that I know I should be thinking, so that I can then feel the positive energy that then will help me to create the scenario to attract, in the universal law of attraction, to bring these things to me. When in reality, what happens is that I have my old program that always runs, right? And we talk about this in growth architecture all the time. There is a plug in the back of your neck and it runs your original program. And it is only when you have a USB port that runs a new program that program can be overwritten. Sometimes there's a problem there, though, and the old program, kicks back in, and you have that moment of, what do I do now? I can't believe this is happening. So you're telling me that instead of feeling bad, which happens in mindset, and which is why I wanted you on the show all the time, that now people start to feel guilty, that they're incapable of being in this positive mindset. And you said, I don't need to worry about that.
No, you do not need to worry about that. You need to just allow yourself to feel the feelings. I always like to say we need to feel it to heal it. We can't, we can't fake it. Like we have to acknowledge how we are feeling and hold space for those feelings so that we can move through them, right? Because if you think of it as shoving all of this stuff down and ignoring it and putting our attention on something else, right? And that just continues to eat away at you. And it's like you're continually running from it. Whereas if instead you allow yourself to feel it, then you can move through it, and sometimes people will say to me when we're tapping on the negative, it's like, oh gosh, am I tapping in the bad stuff? I'm saying how scared I am. No, we're not tapping in the bad stuff. We're allowing ourselves to feel it. And the other thing that's really interesting, and I think as an entrepreneur, I know I do this, right? Like you can get totally in your head, and there's science that says that I think it's like 90% of the thoughts that we have are the same day after day, right? And so when those thoughts are the negative thoughts, like, I don't know, can I do this? Am I worthy of this? Who am I to think that I can do this thing, right? When we're just thinking those things, there's a real power. The cognitive shift can begin to happen simply by saying it out loud. And then the added benefit of the somatic part of this practice of tapping on these points helps to create this distance from that feeling, a feeling that can feel very true, that like, I'm not good enough. I can't do this, right? And then you start tapping and you start saying that, I can't do this. I can't do this. And you're tapping on these points. I can't do this. And then I'll have people start saying, oh my gosh, that is just ridiculous. Like they hear themselves say it and they're like, oh, that's just so silly. I can't even believe that that's how I felt. It starts to create this distance so you have a different perspective. And when you have a different perspective, you begin to think about things differently, and then you feel differently, take different action, get different results.
It's almost like you're dissipated by knocking on the door and seeing what's behind it, really.
Exactly. We're not running from it anymore. We're inviting it in. And that can be a scary thing for people. If you haven't allowed yourself to feel the fear, I've worked with clients who've said, oh, well, it's like standing, this one client gave this example of like, I'm standing on the edge of a cliff, and if I allow myself to feel it, I'm going to be falling over and I'm never coming back from that. And so you can have that fear and you can be in that place, like a fear of even feeling the fear, right? That might be where you're at. And that's okay. You can tap on that. And the idea is you tap on whatever is most prominent for you, and you get that number down to a more manageable level to where it feels like, okay, maybe I can feel this fear around X, Y, and Z, whatever it may be. And you take these baby steps. And the thing that I love about it is that it's an authentic, organic process. And so that you may not in one session go from having this intense fear to being on the top of the world at the end of the session. But what you may be able to do, right, is to create the next best thought or the next best feeling. I feel this fear and it's okay, right? I feel this fear and I know I can do this. And that is powerful. That is powerful.
Yeah, and I'm to your point, right? So going back to the example of the hiring, right? So if you manifested this because you said this is what I'm doing, you made the plan, you obviously manifested now this opportunity that you are bringing this new person on, and now here you are, and you're going into the complete fear-based kind of thing. So the evaluation of what that negative feeling is, a negative feeling doesn't always have to be true. I think you made a huge distinction there to say, now we're looking at that. Is that negative feeling, just so we pointed this out in excess today, because I know a lot of people are struggling with this, Lauren.
Mhm.
When I have this negative feeling and I look at it hard, or and I want to just point out for those of you who can't see us, but you keep tapping onto the bottom of your heart. You want to just tell us a little bit about that, and then we go back to the question?
So there's a bunch of different points, and I can verbally walk everybody through them if you want. But the first one is the pinky side of the hand, and so you can tap with either hand. I'm tapping with my right hand onto my left pinky side of my left hand. But you can do vice versa. And that's where you start, and then you move around the body. And I just also want to add, it's like, well, why are we tapping on these points? The points that we're tapping on are the end points of the meridians. The meridians are how energy moves through the body. This is something that's talked a lot about in Chinese medicine. I often compare it to acupuncture. So when you go to an acupuncture, they take those tiny little needles. Yeah. And they put them in at certain points of the body, right? And that's to help get this energy moving. And that's what we're doing. Those are the points. So we are applying acupressure, gentle acupressure, instead of acupuncture.
Oh,
With
okay. I
yeah,
love
with
that.
that,
Go ahead, please.
no, I was going to say, with that added step, which I think is really helps it stand out, of speaking out loud, like, and really acknowledging how you're feeling. There's so much power in saying it out loud. I can't stress that enough, because a lot of the time people will either come to my class and, they'll have some sort of discomfort. Sometimes it can be uncomfortable saying these things out loud, but it's powerful. So I always encourage people to do that.
Yes, and as you were saying this, and you said it's like acupressure. So I have my little acupressure dots on my hand and my feet. For some reason, I broke my hand a couple months ago, and I'm still having some residual stuff. And for some reason, my feet have been really, 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 really bothering me. So now you talk about, in addition to that, that when we don't pay attention, that there might be physical manifestations of our fears or negative thoughts or unresolved trauma. Talk about that.
Yeah, our body holds on to these things. So the definition of emotion is energy in motion. That means that our emotions are meant to be felt. And so when we spend of this time doing everything we can to avoid feeling the feeling, throwing ourselves into our work or throwing back too many drinks after work, whatever it may be, that works in the short term, but it doesn't work in the long term. And so it's going to portray itself in a way that your body's going to listen to. And I think what most people can relate to is stress. When you are under an inordinate amount of stress, you can feel that physically in your body. And most people, when I ask the question, where do you feel that, and where do you feel your stress in your body? Most people, you're pointing to your shoulders, just like, a lot of people get shoulder, neck pain. That's what happens to me. Some people get chronic headaches. Some people get stomach aches, right? And so that how it manifests itself is whatever way that your body's really going to listen to. And I like to say we need to listen to the whispers so we don't have to hear our bodies scream. And that's our job. It's our job to figure out what our body is trying to say to us. And there are no good and bad emotions, but they are indicators. And so if you can begin to, understand and think about, okay, stress and anxiety, I feel like, is an easy one, but it's not just stress and anxiety that we hold on to physically. It's every single emotion that has not been processed. And so sometimes I'll do this exercise called the constricted breathing exercise, and we're tapping and we're talking and we're focusing on what it feels like when we're taking the breath in and out, and there can be tightness and restriction in the chest. And after we move through that practice, I'll ask, if that constriction that you felt in your chest was an emotion, what emotion would it be? And so, that begins to get the ball rolling in the mind of like, oh yeah, is it heartbreak? Is it anger that I've been holding on? What is it? And so, yeah, we can 100% start to manifest things physically. And then that, of course, too, is going to impact how you're showing up in your business, because if you are not feeling good, it's very hard to put that smile on and go full force when you're physically not in a good place.
Yeah, so I want to make sure that we really have outlined this clearly today. With you being on the show, to our listeners, is that there is a direct connection to how you feel, how you show up in your business, and what your body tells you, and that there are methods like tapping and speaking out loud that really help you to find your way through it. I love that you said that we don't have to think positive all the time. We have to be afraid of any negative thought, because I see that a lot. And myself included, where you go, no, I got to listen to another podcast. So I'm going to be back in a good positive mindset, in the in the possibilities, but my neck still hurts. My stomach still hurts. I'm still not feeling good. I'm dead tired. So I'm 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 putting paint over something that I obviously am not looking at. So it's okay to look at stuff.
Yes. We need to. We absolutely need to examine our feelings and hold space for our feelings and allow them. It is by holding space and allowing them and feeling them that they can begin to move so that they're not causing you all of this pain, physically or emotionally.
Yeah, I just had like a little visual. It's like almost like when we don't do it, it's like, we put the feeling in a dark room and we lock it away, but it's still there the entire time. So
Mhm.
it's only when we keep that door open, we say, oh, yeah, that's the room where the fear is. And, every so often we need to go in there, we need to play with it, we need to put some light in there, we make sure it's all good and taken care of so it doesn't get to be a monster, right? Then
Yes.
that's wonderful. I love this. It's been a really phenomenal conversation. So, Lauren, for somebody who says, I gotta talk to her, I have something that I want her to help me with, where would we send them?
Yeah, so my website is mindshiftwithlauren.com, and I'm currently offering a free monthly live tapping experience for specifically for entrepreneurs, where people come to the group, they share whatever is coming up for them, and then we tap through it as a group together. And you can access that or register for that at mindshiftwithlauren.com/tap-into-success.
Wonderful. I love that. Thank you so much. This has been absolutely enlightening. You know that I will be tapping on top of my acupuncture pressure points that I already have put on my hand. And I think it's a wonderful takeaway message today. Listen to Lauren, everybody, that if you feel fear, don't push it away. Um, find your way through it in a much more subtle way. Lauren, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you so much. I've had so much fun. I appreciate it.
All right. And there you have it. Thank you, everyone, for listening. This is your host, Beate Chelette, and goodbye. And that's it for us today. Thank you for listening and watching the Business Growth Architect Show. I enjoyed having you here. And for accountability, just take one of the strategies that you have heard, one thing that you can implement in your business immediately. Please leave comments. Don't forget to like and share this show. And if you have any questions about business, please put them in the comments. We are here for you. We're here to support you and help you to grow, build, and scale your own business. For more advice, please check out our website in the show notes below. Thank you again. This is Beate Chelette, the Growth Architect, and goodbye.